So some time ago I made a video as a response to one of Diablo 4's dev updates, specifically the one named Returning to Darkness, where I delved into what my thoughts were at that moment regarding that approach and what my concerns were when it came to trying to strike those chords of nostalgia into the player base's hearts, something that Blizzard is quite fond of doing lately. And what better time in the year than October when ghouls lurk in the dark corners of one's eye and ghosts howl and mourn through dilapidated ruins, and of course with the new season of Blood coming. This would be my attempt at a retrospective, a revisiting of these tales, seeing if much has changed in that regard, and did Blizzard actually manage to return to that darkness, and if not, why that endeavor was not impossible in the first place. So if we are to seek that darkness that we so wish to return to, and without much surprise here, we gotta go back to Diablo 1. Now this will not be another praising of the past, another lament over those sugar-coated surface of nostalgia, childhood memories and cliches, although we kinda do have one cliche at the end, so stay put. But we are past that, right? We've all come to the agreement throughout those long years of the franchise's history that both Diablo 1 and 2 had set some standards and are forever etched into the history of gaming. So we are looking at something beneath the surface here, beneath the sarcophagus's time-worn lid. And initially, if we break down Diablo 1's gameplay elements, we might come to the conclusion that it's much more of a dungeon crawler than an ARPG, and in fact, it carries a lot of that roguelike soul with its design, just a different gameplay loop perhaps. But we're still lacking the technology for high monster density, flashy moves, animations, a variety of skills and elaborate atomization, but we're looking at a simple thing, a trope not that uncommon in horror literature and fiction. The lone hero in a gloomy, bleak, doomed world where evil is rising to tear the ground and shake the hearts of mortal men and women, and this creates for the iceberg effect in Diablo 1, Tristram being the blasted swath of countryside where once a great kingdom stood with its glory long gone, fallen to hell's corruption, and you, the poor soul doomed to wander the far corners of the earth, embark on what seems like the impossible quest, alone mind you, or at least until we got the Hellfire expansion that is, but in this world where you rarely meet a single soul, lest for the twisted broken husks of once great men and women, you are steadily descending down into hell, facing the essence of all that is evil and unholy, and eventually you face terror alone, and you lose. You lose your soul to hell, and that is a theme that is more likely to connect with many of us on a more personal level than just your ordinary gore fest. There's that well-known catchphrase from the first Alien movie, "In space no one can hear you scream." This alone captures what I'm trying to say rather perfectly, and in the cold emptiness of space, being alone and vulnerable, hunted and outmatched is probably the pinnacle of bone-chilling terror. And if we take a look at Howard Philip Lovecraft's quote here, "Fear of the unknown," well, that's what Diablo 1 had been for us back in the day. You didn't know what lurked down there. With each level further down into hell, you couldn't even see the health of the enemies you're fighting. A slight shift of genre here, but think of Dark Souls, for example, and why is Dark Souls' harsh nature so alluring? Are we all these twisted, self-loathing masochists, or is it because fear triggers something in our brains that makes us crave for more? Would Dark Souls be as challenging if we could just swarm bosses in a random party of bugs? Would we even remember these encounters? And this kinda applies for all of From Software's games, and sure, you do have the option to invite someone or get invaded and whatever, but you know what I'm talking about. Most of the time, you just die alone. And Diablo 2 retains a lot of that feeling, and it is a continuation of the Lone Wanderer's grim fate, and in an age where the internet is not yet made its way into every home, or at least not where I was born, you still end up facing evil alone. You start out from that rogue encampment, a small hopeless sisterhood of rogues squatting in the wilderness, the last bastion of hope against Andariel's spreading corruption. And you journey forth, reaching hell again, taking refuge along with a handful of survivors along the act hubs, and you can feel the futility of these places, how they could be swallowed by hell's forces any minute now. The challenges you face are actually challenging. There are many wake-up calls during your playthrough. Boss fights, although these essentially are just damage sponges, they actually make you rethink strategies, be it a different merc or resistance check or gear swap for example, and if Mephisto shreds you with a single lightning, then perhaps you should look at your lightning res. In comparison, we've got, or at least that's what an open world game suggests, big hubs with players strutting all around and NPCs just goofing around in the wilderness, unarmed men and women going out there, and you have to fend off demons to save them like the knight in shining armor you are, and literally a kid following you around like this is Indiana Jones in the Temple of Doom. Great movie, by the way. I just wanted to make a certain point that has nothing to do with how great it is. And even if there were the slightest chance of you getting into trouble, some random player could just rush by and casually blast through the whole screen. So, in a way, yeah, this is what an MMO type of an open world ARPG looks like, called the Taint of Our Age, but a game like that can never recreate the feeling of terror. You can never return to that darkness, simply because it would never achieve success if it were designed as one gloomy solitary journey. There is no way you could ever feel danger or terror in that vast open world, as gothic as it is and as much gore and creepy shit you put into it. And when it comes to challenges, while in Diablo 1 and 2 you have that constant struggle where you eventually do get stronger and gear it up and actually start to feel that power that you could save the world from hell's corruption, with Diablo 4's level scaling you're always on that flat plateau. You never actually get to feel neither challenged or get that accomplishment of braving a challenge, of climbing up that difficulty curve. In a way, there's that weird middle ground that appeals to no one. The casual player will always feel the mobs being equally strong and that his or her character never gaining enough power, while on the other hand, the veteran player will feel the game like a complete slogfest, something devoid of emotion, with nothing to make him rethink strategies and builds, come up with smart solutions and tackle obstacles and go through a benchmark checklist, if you will. So I gotta ask, is tedium alluring? Is it something that induces emotion? Does it make us crave for more? In this open world where the NPC plus players to demon ratio is fairly in favor of the latter, how could you ever feel threatened? Would that teenager slasher movie be as scary if all the teenagers were the ones armed with chainsaws? So we go back to Dark Souls once more, and let's think of what makes us want to endure a playthrough of yet another From Software's game. Apart, of course, from it being a great game with great level design, great combat, and great character progression and all that, is it because deep down on an emotional level we feel that sense of danger that is so enticing, and that flutter in the heart with every close call, the rush of adrenaline that we're hardwired to seek out like little clueless lab mice? With fear being one of the most powerful emotions, blotting out even intelligence, that group of kids would always enter that dark cave, metaphorically speaking, of course, and enter the haunted house or go and sneak into that crazy old axe-wielding's neighbor's backyard. Guilty of that, though. I mean, being the kid that's not in the backyard, not the, you know. And each and every one of these kids would have spent countless sleepless nights playing Resident Evil 1 on the good old PlayStation. So, have the guys from OG Blizzard known that? I doubt that they were these masters of horror literature preying on our fragile little minds. There were a bunch of guys that were content with coding a character model that could move, and then make that character model hit a skeleton, and then make that skeleton drop a sword, and eventually they did make a hell of a good story out of that. We have passion and vision, something that we've already kind of agreed upon that the current Diablo team lacks. And even if we do seek that thrill, we do want that dopamine in the brain and the relief of it being over thereafter, or the sense of fulfillment as we brave that darkness. There is one other emotion even stronger than fear. Prepare for the cliche, guys, because it's coming right now. Love. I mean, love for our beloved video games, and this is the one thing that modern Blizzard knows all too well, and they also know that we would pray to the devil himself for that spark of hope, for a fragment of that love relived once more. You might want to put your Diablo 1 soundtrack to drive off the sugar-sprinkled fairies out of your room, because that was a sticky one. And while I've been making this video, of course, Season of Blood has already been announced. The dev stream or at least the first part of it, has already been dissected by fellow content creators. So in this October filled with hope, we're looking forward to the 17th, right? Maybe finally this Lord Zir would stir some emotion. In any case, I'll be driving the hammer of the ancients down his ugly face. See you next time, guys.